A $200,000 salary is, frankly, the most dangerous financial trap you can fall into. See, it's high enough to make you comfortable, but it's far too low to ever make you truly free. Look, I see this happen to talented young professionals and entrepreneurs every single day. You hit that multiple six-figure mark, and you feel like you finally arrived, right? But the reality is, $200,000 a year is the ultimate psychological dead zone. It's that specific threshold where you earn enough to upgrade every aspect of your life, but not enough to actually buy back your time. This is the birth of the Henry, the high earner, not rich yet. On paper, sure, you're in the top 5 or 10% of earners, but your balance sheet tells a very different story. I mean, let's look at the math. When you're making $16,000 a month gross, Uncle Sam is taking roughly 30 to 35% right off the top. You're left with maybe $11,000. Then, well, the psychology of the comfort zone kicks in. You move into the $4,000 a month apartment. You lease the $1,200 SUV. And you start frequenting those restaurants where a bottle of wine costs more than your first car's monthly insurance. Before you even know it, your bills have expanded to meet your income perfectly. This is lifestyle creep in its most lethal form, because it leaves you with zero leverage. You aren't building a mountain of capital, my friend. You're just servicing a more expensive set of liabilities. I want you to realize something. If your high-income career is your only engine of wealth, you aren't actually successful. You're just one corporate restructuring or one market shift away from total insolvency. At $200,000, you have enough to lose that you become risk-averse, but not enough to be truly independent. You're trapped in a cycle of high-status poverty. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to break this cycle. We're going to shift your focus from earning more to owning more. Because until your assets pay for your life, your high salary is just a very expensive cage. Let's actually run the numbers for a second, because the math behind a high salary, it's often a total lie. You see $200,000 on your W-2 and you think you finally made it, right? But if you're living in a global hub like New York or San Francisco, well, the tax man is your first and most expensive roommate. At a 35% effective tax rate, $70,000 evaporates before it even hits your bank account. You're now looking at $130,000. Now, let's talk about where you actually live. To maintain the professional proximity and the image required for a $200,000 role, you're likely spending at least $5,000 a month on housing. That's another $60,000 gone annually. After you factor in professional upkeep, the tailored wardrobe, the networking dinners, the high-end commute, and let's not forget the premium services you pay for just to reclaim a few hours of your exhausted time, you're often left with less than $40,000 in actual discretionary income. You are essentially working 60 hours a week for a net profit that barely fuels the very lifestyle you need to keep the job. Compare this to what I call the asset architect. This individual might earn a lower gross income, perhaps $120,000, but they've optimized for equity and location rather than just a corporate title. While you're out there chasing a 3% annual merit increase, they are focused on assets that return 15 to 20% through business equity or high-yield investments. This is the fundamental difference between linear and exponential growth. Measurably, a 3% raise on a $200,000 salary adds a mere $6,000 to your gross pay. Honestly, that's an amount that is easily swallowed by inflation, or even a slight increase in your rent. It is simply incapable of moving the needle on your net worth. However, an asset architect with a $500,000 portfolio returning 15% is generating $75,000 in growth without selling a single hour of their life. Over a decade, your 3% raises will leave you exactly where you started, stuck on the treadmill. Meanwhile, the asset architect's wealth is doubling every few years. You see, you are trading your life force for a number that shrinks every month, while they are building a machine that grows while they sleep. But look, the financial drain is only half the problem. The real danger isn't just the money you're losing, it's the psychological cage that this high salary builds around your ambition. However, there is a specific reason why most people realize this too late, and it has everything to do with a concept called Golden Handcuffs. Look, to break the cycle, I need to show you the blueprint I call the freedom engine. It's the only way to turn a high-income trap into a high-net-worth reality. You see, it starts with the 40% freedom tax. If you're making $200,000, I need you to realize that you don't actually have $200,000 to spend. Not even close. You have $120,000. Professional, you are going to take $80,000, exactly 40% of your gross pay, and divert it into a dedicated business brokerage account before it ever hits your lifestyle checking account, right? This isn't a savings account for a rainy day. It's a war chest for your exit strategy. Honestly, if you can't live on $120,000 a year, your problem isn't your income, it's your ego. Once that capital is moving, I want you to deploy it using what I call the leverage triad. Most professionals only understand one type of leverage, their own labor. But to escape, you must invest in three things: content, code, or capital. Content allows you to build an audience and authority that scales without you. Code involves software or automated systems that solve problems 24/7. And capital, that's your traditional real estate and stock market compounding. While your $200,000 job uses your time as the only input, these three pillars use assets as the input. Your goal is to stop being the engine and start being the architect.
The next phase is shifting your psychology from a W-2 mindset to a business entity mindset. As a high-earning employee, look, you are the most heavily taxed entity in the legal system. By moving your ventures into a formal business structure, you shift the math. You earn, you invest in the business, and you are taxed only on what remains. This shift alone can save you 20 to 30% in annual tax drag. I want you to track one specific metric: $1 of business equity for every $1 of salary earned. When your equity value matches your annual pay, you aren't just an employee anymore. You are a business owner with a high-paying consulting gig. But even with this engine running, there is one invisible force that can stall your progress instantly. It's a mathematical phenomenon that 95% of high earners ignore until their net worth plateaus for a decade. It's the silent killer of the upper middle class. And if I don't show you how to spot it right now, none of this leverage will matter. To understand how this trap functions in the real world, I want you to look at a side-by-side simulation of two professionals. Let's call them person A and person B. Both are 30 years old, and both just landed a promotion that bumped their salary to $200,000 a year. Person A decides to celebrate. You see, I witness this happen every single day in the corporate world. They trade in their reliable sedan for a $1,200 a month Porsche lease. Then they move into a $5,000 a month McMansion, simply because their colleagues live in that zip code. Between the high-end vacations, the country club fees, and the designer wardrobe, person A is spending $185,000 of their $200,000 income. On paper, they look like a massive success. But in reality, their savings rate is a mere 7.5%. They are running on a treadmill that requires $15,000 a month just to stay upright. Now, look at person B. Person B makes the exact same $200,000, but they make a conscious choice to ignore the status games. I call this the wealth gap. They maintain the same $75,000 a year lifestyle they had when they were making 5 figures, which actually leaves them with a $125,000 annual surplus. While person A is buying depreciating metal and square footage they don't use, person B is aggressively buying income-producing assets. By year 7, the math produces a staggering divergence.
Person A has a high-status lifestyle, but a net worth that is effectively zero when you factor in their massive liabilities. If they lose their job tomorrow, they are 30 days away from total bankruptcy. They aren't wealthy, they are just a high-income renter of a lifestyle they don't actually own. Person B, however, has stayed disciplined. By year 7, their portfolio has grown to over $1.1 million, assuming a conservative market return. But here is the critical part. The passive cash flow from that portfolio, derived from a mix of 40% low-cost index funds, 40% cash flowing real estate, and 20% high-yield private credit, is now generating $77,000 a year. At year 7, Person B's assets now cover their entire cost of living. They are mathematically free. They can walk away from their job at any moment, while Person A is more trapped than the day they started. Person B has used their high salary as a tool for scaling, while Person A used it as a tool for vanity.
But achieving this level of freedom requires more than just a high savings rate, right? You have to understand the specific asset allocation that turns a high salary into a self-sustaining business. If you mismanage the 20% growth portion of your portfolio, you might find yourself stuck in a different kind of trap, one that involves the very people you trust most with your money. There is one specific wealth advisor lie that almost every high earner falls for, and it could cost you decades of compounding if you don't catch it in your next quarterly review. Look, I want you to realize that the $200,000 salary you've worked so hard to achieve, it is not the finish line. Think of it as a high-performance engine. But if you're using that engine to power a lifestyle rather than an empire, well, you're simply a high-paid passenger on a ship you don't even own. The most dangerous part of this trap, and it is a trap, is that it feels like winning. You have the house, the car, the status, but you're still trading your most finite resource, your time, for a paycheck that can be turned off at any moment. You see, your salary is not your wealth. It is the fuel for your wealth. To achieve true scale, you must make the aggressive transition from earned income to equity-based wealth. While the average high earner is obsessed with a 5% raise, an asset architect is focused on how many productive assets that income can acquire. If you aren't diverting at least 25 to 30% of your gross income into assets that appreciate while you sleep, whether that's index funds, real estate, or private equity, you aren't building freedom. You're just funding a more expensive prison. Here is your mandate for this week. Audit your current savings rate and your net worth growth. If your income has scaled by 20% over the last 2 years, but your investments have stayed stagnant, then you've fallen for the trap, right? You must adopt a business owner mindset, treating your personal finances like a corporation, where the goal is to maximize retained earnings for reinvestment. Do not let the comfort of a 6-figure direct deposit blind you to the reality of your situation. Comfort is the ultimate enemy of freedom. The gilded cage is still a cage, and the only way out is to stop working for your money and start demanding that your money works for you. If you are ready to stop being a high-earning employee and start becoming a true wealth architect, subscribe to the channel and join our community of investors and entrepreneurs. We are here to help you scale your wealth and reclaim your time. Leave a comment below and tell me, what is the one asset class you are prioritizing this year to break the salary trap? I'll see you in the next strategy session.